If you really cared about climate change, you wouldn't be blowing the shit up. You wouldn't be blowing the shit out of Ukraine.
Take the first step towards online privacy. Get NordVPN.
Oh, Gordon, how you doing?
You know what? When you first opened up the live, you were yawning, and that's exactly how I feel. I've been really, really tired.
Yeah. You did a lot of work with Craig Murray's campaign for the Workers' Party in Blackburn, was it?
I went up there 6 times in, I think, 5 weeks.
Wow.
To cover all the events up there. I've got so much to talk about, Rich. It's just, it's mind-boggling, really, with the stuff that's gone on.
Okay. All right. Well, we're recording this on the 8th of July, 6:30 p.m. UK time, British summer time, and we've just had the results of the French elections, which I'm kind of, I don't know, right? You may be surprised. And then we had the UK elections last Thursday. So come on then, where do you want to start, mate? Independent journalist, all the links in the description below, gordondimmack.com. Follow TikTok and Twitter and where else?
Well, let's start with Labour's brilliant, fantastic result where they just wiped the floor with everybody, and it was the best result they've had forever, if you would listen to the media. But if you actually look at the statistics, Rich, and I'm sure you have, that doesn't tell the story.
No.
Because Labour got less votes than in 2019. Do you remember 2019, Jeremy Corbyn had to resign because it was the worst result in like 80 years? Do you remember? Labour got less votes, 500,000 less votes than 2019. I think 2 or 3 million less than 2017.
Starmer got 1 million less, I think.
No, it wasn't 1 million. His vote was cut in half. He went from something like 39,000 to 19,000 or something like that. He got 5,000 votes less, Starmer did, than Jeremy Corbyn.
Wow.
They took 1/3 of the total vote and somehow have ended up with 2/3 of the seats.
Yeah.
This is not a democracy, is it? There's clearly something wrong with that if you can get 1/3 of the votes but 2/3 of the representation. This wasn't, and then what was it? Everybody's saying, "Oh, it's a great Labour victory and whatever," but this wasn't a win for Labour. Labour didn't win this. It wasn't a vote for Labour. It was a vote against the Tories. That's what happened. And Labour's vote fractured everywhere, and they got less votes than 2019. But there was no one party there to pick up the slack. And we're now in a 5-year term of what I think might be the most dangerous prime minister to this country that there has ever been.
Yep. And was it the Lib Dems with their 3+ million votes got 71 seats, and Reform with their 4 million plus got 5 seats?
It's, the stuff that goes on behind the scenes for that to happen, Rich. I had a window into it up in Blackburn, because Craig Murray, for your audience that don't know, Craig Murray is a diplomat that blew the whistle in Uzbekistan, a UK diplomat. He blew the whistle in Uzbekistan because he found out that the CIA were torturing people there, and he found out that the UK government knew about it, and he blew the whistle, and he had to resign from his career. He lost his career as a diplomat, a highly well-paid career where, I mean, he had in the house he was in Uzbekistan, he had 5 or 6 servants. So
I mean, being the ambassador for the UK to any country is a big deal. That's
he gave all that up back in 2003 or 2002 to blow the whistle on torture of Muslims in the Middle East, basically.
I read his book about it. It was awful. He found out about some guy who was being boiled. That's how they were torturing him. They were boiling him alive. He complained about it, went public, lost his post. They were out to destroy his career, smeared him. And
his record, if you look at his record since as well, I mean, he's exemplary for doing that, if you ask me.
Yeah.
But if you look at his record since, I mean, he was instrumental. I found out recently in the formation of WikiLeaks. He helped formulate WikiLeaks. He had a hand in that. He obviously ran against Jack Straw in the 2005 election in Blackburn, and Jack Straw was, of course, the architect of the lies behind the weapons of mass destruction. He lied about it along with Tony Blair and the rest of them. So he stood against him in Blackburn, and he's an incredible speaker, somebody with incredible knowledge. His writings that he's done on the Gaza situation, the situation in Palestine, were instrumental in the ICJ bringing South Africa bringing the case against Israel to the ICJ. When South Africa were actually laying out their case in front of the ICJ, putting Israel on trial for genocide, Craig Murray's articles were in front of them. He was the architect of it. This was after he basically started thinking about this after a conversation with one of the American journalists who's always holding the State Department's feet to the fire. Anyway, his record is exemplary. He obviously was instrumental in the Free Julian Assange campaign.
Yep.
Friend of the families, and he's been an advocate for human rights his entire career. And basically, you couldn't find a better candidate for somebody to stand in Blackburn. Blackburn is a 40% Asian population.
One other thing about Craig Murray, he went to prison, was it 6 months or 8 months, because he refused to disclose a journalistic source. So he didn't go to prison. I think something like that.
No, it wasn't that. He went to prison for something called jigsaw identification, because he took publicly available knowledge and wrote about it in a way that basically people could put the pieces together to figure out that, the person who accused Alex Salmond of inappropriateness towards them, the woman, was actually in the inner circle of Nicola Sturgeon, which means Nicola Sturgeon knew about it all along. And that's why he went to prison, for basically outing the truth that Nicola Sturgeon was a lying cow, which we've obviously found out since. Yes, she is, and it looks like there's police investigations. Anyway, his CV, like you say, I haven't got enough time to hit this man's achievements. That I'll always forget one or two things. He's done that much. So for him to stand in Blackburn, which is a heavily Asian population, 40% Asian, most of them Muslim, the overwhelming amount of them, with obviously a genocide going on in Gaza right now, where sentiment towards the Labour Party and the Labour Party's complicitness in this genocide, there's a lot of anger, and you've seen that up and down the country. So to put Craig in there as the independent candidate, then that's great. And all the councillors, the independent councillors in Blackburn, the movers and shakers, if you like, they all supported Craig. And I went up there and covered the launch where George Galloway was there and they spoke. And the independent councillors were in the room at the meeting before, where they accepted Craig as their sort of nominee for the independent vote in Blackburn. Then George Galloway made his speech, and Craig, running in the Workers' Party, he isn't a member of the Workers' Party, he was just running in the Workers' Party to give it exposure. Within 2-3 days, all of a sudden, this guy popped up, another independent candidate called Adnan Hussein, to split the vote, essentially, the pro-Palestinian, the vote. Labour in the last election got 29,000 votes in Blackburn. So it was thought that if Craig could get something like 16,000 votes, then he was in with a shot of winning, of beating the Labour candidate. And without the splitting of the vote, that undoubtedly would have happened. So early on, when he found out that this guy was running, they had a meeting in his apartment, actually, that he's renting there, his flat. And he was meant to be coming alone, Adnan was, to this meeting, but he brought somebody else with him. And Craig knew immediately who he was, because he was Jack Straw's old campaign manager from 2005.
No.
So Craig said 80% of the talking was done by this campaign manager. Adnan only spoke 20% of the time. Adnan's from a very rich family in Blackburn. They're very well connected. He's been a lawyer for 2 years. I think he's 34 years old. But apart from a speech he made once on behalf of Palestine outside Harrods 10 years ago, that's his CV with regards to pro-Palestine and pro-human rights and what have you. So all of the Labour councillors switched their support from Craig to this Adnan. Craig therefore didn't have the money that he was expecting for the campaign, and this Adnan got, I think, somewhere in the region of 5 to 6 times the amount of money to run on the campaign, and they had like 80 or 90 people working for them. So Craig had to bring everybody in to try and help this situation where the vote was split, and there was lots of talk of one of them dropping out. There was even a coin flip suggested at one stage for one of them to drop out, but one of the religious people high up in Birmingham, I think, asked Adnan to drop out at one stage, and Adnan said, if he asked me to drop out, I'll drop out, and he asked him, and then they went, no, we're not dropping out. But apart from all that shenanigans and that backstabbing, Craig thought, they stabbed me in the back. There was a lot of dirty tricks. There was a lot of editing of videos, of audio, to make it seem like Craig had said the opposite of what he actually has said by their campaign. There was an online smear campaign where they just smeared his character in videos, replied to my TikTok channel. There's loads of them in replies, all questioning Craig's character, which is a big no-no in an election, by the way. Questioning your opponent's character and their integrity is something you are not supposed to do in an election, but they did that. There was a lot of antagonistic behaviour from their campaign. For instance, on polling day, we walked up, we were outside the polls, and I had a billboard with Craig Murray on. And the literacy rate in Blackburn is actually quite low. We realised you put 5 on there for the box 5 for those people who couldn't read, you know. And the campaign complained to the police that they've got this box 5 on my thing, and the police told me I've got to go around the corner out of shot of the polling station, which was no problem. The next thing you know, my missus saw the girl going up to, who got us ejected, going up to people who was walking in the poll station, going, two. And my missus said, I thought you're not meant to do that. You're saying 2. She said, no, I'm saying peace. So there's all that, you know, stuff behind the scenes as well, the antagonistic behaviour of their people. And then you've got the imams in the mosques, because they're all connected to the movers and shakers in Blackburn who were all behind Labour and now went behind Adnan. You could say it was just a second Labour candidate, if really, if you're actually thinking about it. The imams got people en masse out to vote for Adnan against the white candidate. And that's essentially the reason why they were saying that you've got to vote for Adnan because he's one of us, and he's not white. Which, if you reverse that situation, Rich, that's a classic case of racism.
It is racism. There's no need to reverse it. It is racism, judging somebody by the colour of their skin.
Now, the problem here is if Labour were behind this splitting of the vote, it backfired on them because Adnan won by 200 votes. Labour went from 29,000 votes to 10,000.
Yeah, but they've got a plan. He's a Labour proxy with Jack Straw's campaign manager.
So it doesn't matter. From what I can tell, by the way, the Labour MP up there, Kate Holiday or something like that, whatever her name is, she's well respected in the area, and I didn't hear a bad word about her. And she's very pro-Gaza, but she can't speak up because she's hamstrung by her own party. In which case, what the hell are you doing there anyway? If you're a great person and you can't actually speak your mind, you know. So we had all of these dirty tricks going on up in Blackburn, all of the backstabbing, all of the lies. I mean, if that's your Labour candidate, and if that's your candidate that's anti-Labour, pro-Gaza, then, I mean, I'm sorry, mate, you've just elected a new boss exactly the same as the old. This guy's going to be a puppet, and he's going to barely say a thing in Parliament, whereas Craig Murray would obviously go down there and be a massive threat to the establishment. So, yeah, that's the situation that I saw. Craig had some brilliant events. We covered Dr. Bob Gill. Roger Waters did a great speech there. Dr. David Miller came up and did a great speech on Palestine. And, you know, we obviously had Chris Hedges and Richard Medhurst as well. The campaign went really well. He got 7,000 votes. Everybody was saying, that's incredible. He got twice as much as they thought he was going, and all the momentum was going in Craig's way. But we just ran out of time, and unfortunately, I think money, to be able to make a dent. And this, I heard, Rich, that these tactics were going on up and down the country in multiple areas. I mean, basically, this vote was fixed. It was rigged.
Yeah, like the French vote, which we may come to, right? And do you know what happened in Galloway's constituency? Similar?
Yeah, he lost. He lost, but there was lots of stuff going on there. I know a little bit, but I can't really say much either because I've got a little bit of inside knowledge there. Yeah, there were some naughty things going on.
And I listened to Galloway, his Moat show on Sunday. I just listened to the bit where he does in the beginning, the 18 minutes, where he does his op-ed piece. He was talking about how with Corbyn, there was all sorts of shenanigans, including people being told, "Oh, Corbyn's in the Labour Party, so vote Labour."
Yeah,
Yeah,
they were going on the doorstep. Oh, I've been told Corbyn was still in Labour.
yeah. Well, Gordon, this is my thoughts on it, right? Because it was a bit of a surprise that Rishi Sunak called the election so early. He didn't need to. And one of the things I said ever since Boris Johnson resigned, I said the Tories are going to do such an awful job. They're going to hand a massive majority over to Labour because Keir Starmer is uber WEF.
It's that Tory in a red card.
Sorry?
He's a Tory in a red tie.
No, he's not even Tory. He's WEF. He's worse. He's WEF. Sunak's not a Tory. He's not a Tory.
Well, they're all WEF though.
They're all WEF, right? Except what the Tories had to deal with, the fake Tories WEF had to deal with, was this rump of 100 liberty-loving MPs. I'm sure I've said this to you before. When it came to the vaccine mandates for the NHS, 100 Tory MPs voted against the vaccine mandates. There were only 8 opposition MPs that voted. One of them was Jeremy Corbyn. Diane Abbott voted against it. Caroline Lucas voted against it. So you have 8 opposition voting against vaccine mandates, and you have 100 within the government. Now those
opposition that is.
Sorry, yeah, well, those people like Andrew Bridge and Brexiteers or whatever, those 100 MPs are now gone. Now you have Labour with this uber majority. People think they're going to bring in Labour policies. They're not. They're going to bring in WEF policies. And they're just going to walk through with their Great Reset agenda. Starmer already said in his acceptance speech, we're going to do, we need a greater reset. And then he was checking his speech every two seconds or something. Galloway doesn't need to check his notes. Farage doesn't need to check his notes. Corbyn doesn't need to check his notes because they're speaking from conviction and from the heart. Starmer's just a puppet doing the bidding of the WEF. Now, here's why I think they called it early. Because of the threat of the Workers' Party.
Yeah, it was Galloway. It was Galloway.
Yeah.
When Galloway won, Rishi Sunak next morning was out front of number 10.
Like Britain had gone to war. It's an assault on democracy. There was a by-election and this guy won. Oh my God, a terrible assault. So, because then the Workers' Party was stealing support from Labour, which means Keir Starmer's WEF agenda isn't going to get the majority that it needs. Reform eating away at the Tories is not a problem because Sunak led such a bad campaign. It wasn't an accident. Somebody would have said, if they were serious, no, don't say you're going to bring in conscription. That won't win you votes. The fuck? You think that's a vote winner? Don't say we're going to bring in young conscription to send young men to go and fight against Russia. What the fuck? Right? No, that was deliberately badly led, in order to hand over this massive majority to Starmer and to do it in such a way to knock the legs off, from the Workers' Party, chop them off at the knees, because that was growing and growing and growing and growing and growing, and they didn't have the ground game. And then Galloway and the Workers' Party didn't get the coverage that Farage and the Reform Party did.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is you and me on this.
We agree on this, right? And then allows them to paint Reform as racist, and I don't think Farage is racist. I've listened to long form interviews of his.
Look at some of the older stuff, mate.
Well, listen. Let me say something, right? In every party, whether it's Labour or Lib Dem or Green or Tory or Reform, right? You're going to get people that have the kind of views that you and I don't agree with, right?
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean that it's not an explicitly racist party in the way that the NF or UKIP has become, I think, right? So, but anyway, you and I don't necessarily agree on this, right? But fair enough.
No, I think weaponizing 30,000, 40,000 immigrants who are fleeing, all sorts of awfulness caused by us. I think weaponizing them for your political gains is racist.
Okay, and I think it's worse than that, right? You may not have seen the document by the United Nations, UN Migration Plan. They actually have a policy of having people move from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East, into Europe, into North America, which is why you have all these governments with open borders. Now, there's one thing about genuine asylum seekers, people who are fleeing war. But a rump of the people that are coming over into the UK are Albanian. A rump
Yeah,
of the
but
people that are
it's a
going into
tiny,
Ireland are Georgian, and they're all bloody
yeah,
men.
it's a tiny percentage though of the overall. I understand that on any one given day it might be lots of Albanians coming in or lots of Georgians coming in, but if you actually look at the overall percentage of these 40,000, it's overwhelmingly Iran, Iraq, Libya, all countries that we've been effing with for decades. You
Overwhelmingly,
can't just cherry pick Albanian and Georgian just because on any one given week or
in
month.
Ireland it's mostly Georgia. In Georgian, it's in Ireland it's mostly men from Georgia. This is what I've been told, right? The majority, right? They're also military age men. Now, here's
Well,
something else about immigration.
can I just say something there? Can I just jump in if you don't mind? If they're fleeing Georgia because they're military age men, if I was Georgian, I'd be fleeing it.
Right, Georgia's not at war. Georgia's making peace with making
Give
nice.
it 5 minutes. Serious. Give it 5 minutes. You know how they've been messing about with Georgia, the NATO countries. You know how they are. You know they're going to be first in the firing line next. You know they've got a border with Russia, same as Orban.
But Georgia's allying itself with Russia.
Yes, and what's happening when they align themselves with Russia? The West are turning against it, saying, "Oh, they've passed this pro-Russian anti-war, and they're stirring up all sorts of, protests and another colour revolution." You can see that they're trying to do.
Yeah, but the colour revolution.
Give it 5 minutes. If I was military age man in Georgia, I would be out of there too, Rich. I would.
Okay. Here's something else then, right? Here's something, the larger picture. Because one of the things that happens, the way the WF play their game, right, is people focus on one issue and they don't see how it all connects together. Do you know about the Cloward Piven strategy?
I think we've mentioned this before. I think you and I have talked about it before.
Two lecturers in the 60s came back, well, how do you move from the sort of mixed economy that we've got in the West, right, to a socialist, centralized, controlled economy? Well, actually, not even socialist, because there's no democratic control here, right? You create the conditions where people turn to government for salvation. You create conflict, open borders. And by the way, Gordon, for people, and also people who don't know, I wasn't born in the UK. I was born in Pakistan. I'm an immigrant, right? Yeah. So I wasn't born here or anything, right? I'm first generation immigrant. Open borders don't take care of people.
No, I totally agree with you there.
There's one thing, when people were coming over in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s because the economy was booming and you needed the workers, then you're bringing in people who work, who have to be responsible, who have to hold down jobs, who've got a source of income, who are then contributing. But when you're bringing in people, whether it's legal or illegal, and there isn't the work and there isn't the housing infrastructure, and it isn't like the economy is booming because we've got a cost of living crisis, right? You have more and more people struggling for the same amount of resources. That creates conflict, and it kills the local working class because it depresses wages. It kills training opportunities. Countries don't develop their own. One of my reasons why I voted Brexit, right, is because I looked at what was happening in Romania, where they had the most productive of the workforce leaving Romania to go and work in Germany and Britain. Well, what happens to the tax base in Romania? The government has less income to pay for benefits, to take care of the elderly, to take care of children, to take care of the sick, because their brightest and their best, their most productive, have left. In Ireland now, Gordon, and perhaps you and I should do a video together with one of the Irish independent campaigners, right, from the freedom movement. 1 in 3 19 to 39-year-olds in Ireland are recent arrivals, migrants. 1 in 3. A couple of weeks ago, in the town of Knock, which is some Roman Catholic shrine, the Irish government deposited enough migrants, probably all Muslim or Eastern Orthodox Christian, if they were Georgian, right, equivalent to 10% of Knock's population. What does that do? What does that create? That's not taking care of those people. and that's not taking care of local people. It sets up the conditions for conflict. That's what that does. And we don't, these people are unvetted. Open borders are a gift for child traffickers, a gift for women traffickers, a gift for drug dealers. And
are you under the impression that I'm for open borders, Rich?
No, I'm not. Thank you for reminding me.
The audience understand that.
Sort of preach to the converted. Thank you. I think what the mainstream media have done with reform is characterize them as racist. Anybody who says anything against immigration, they get smeared and characterized because all they've got is smearing. The outlets that told us that Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic are somehow going to tell us the truth about Nigel Farage. I've listened to Nigel Farage's long-form interviews where he said, look, we can't have open borders. We need to know who these people are. He was talking about the value of legal migration from India.
All right, Nigel. Hi, Nigel. How are you? You're not for open borders, right? You think these migrants crossing the channel are a real threat to our country, right? And we should do something about that, Nigel. Here's what we do. You know our Royal Navy that's in the Black Sea and the Red Sea right now, protecting Ukraine's and Israel's borders. Are you, Nigel, all for pulling those back and putting them in the English Channel and stopping it? Oh, you're not.
No. He's opposed to war. He's been speaking out against the war in Russia, in Ukraine.
Well.
Yeah, no, listen, fair enough. I accept he's pro-Zionist, but he's against war. RFK is against war, but he's pro-Zionist. Like, I think Israel's the right side, but we don't want to be going to war.
I'm vegetarian, but I eat steak.
You're vegetarian, but you don't mind me eating meat. Fine.
What kind of nonsense is that? I'm anti-Zionist, but I'm anti-war as well.
No, he's not anti-Zionist. He's pro-Zionist.
Pro-Zionist and anti-war, rather. You can't be both. Two things are diametrically opposed to each other.
Gordon, he considers Hamas as a terrorist organization. Right?
Yeah, I consider the IDF a terrorist organisation. There's your stalemate. Which one's killed the most innocent people? Really? Which one has a history of?
I'm not going to argue with you on this one. I agree with you on this one.
I know you do, mate. I'm talking to the third person who's presenting me that argument. It's stupid. It's a dumb argument that they're making here. It really is. And I wish people like RFK, especially RFK. I wish I don't know what it is with him. I think. Nothing. My mate Steve Poikonen in America says he showed a picture of RFK with an Israeli flag, and my mate Steve Poikonen just captioned it with nothing screams I'm not going out the same way as my uncle and my more than this picture, which essentially and that in itself. If he's calling Hamas an organisation, but he's scared for his life. If he comes out and says anti-Israel, then which one of these are the terrorists? RFK, right?
Listen, RFK is pro-Zionist. Do you know who's also a great disappointment? Bloody Tulsi Gabbard on every bloody thing, right? And then she's pro-Zionist, right? Which may have something to do with her Hindu.
I've never been let down by a politician more than her. I was really behind her.
Yeah, and then she came out. But here's something else, then, right? Here's something else you could say, right? There is. Right now, I think the greatest threat that we face is the WEF. CBDCs, this Labour government are going to carry on the Tory policy of destroying the food supply. Do you know that's going on?
Well, yes.
Right.
But there's an antidote to that.
Oh, the bugs.
We grab our own food.
Yeah, no, the Tory government are Gordon, it's insane what's happening there. I'll tell you what's coming, right? The Tory government are destroying farmland. They're making it harder for farmers to farm because of climate change, right? Because farming is really bad for the climate.
Can just anybody out there who thinks that cows are the problem, right? What's the equivalence in cow farts of the Nord Stream pipeline being blown up? Because that was methane. How many cow farts or cow burps or whatever it is do you think blowing up the Nord Stream pipeline is equivalent to?
Yeah.
Every cow on the planet times 10, I'm assuming?
You'll like this. My wife, she's not political like me, right? But she's married to me. Green Party canvasser comes to the door. Now, she's not argumentative or anything, really. But he says, I mean, are you going to vote green? She goes, no, we're not voting green. And she said to him, she said, what's your position on Israel? Oh, we're opposed to the murder of Palestine. Okay, what's your position on Ukraine? Oh, well, we support Ukraine. We're opposed to Russia. And she goes, well, aren't Ukrainian and Russian lives as valuable as Palestinian and Israeli lives? Right? And then what about and you're all for the environment. What about the damage that war does to the environment? Poor guy. Poor guy. It's like he hadn't even thought of it. So I'm going back to an earlier point. People don't put this stuff together, right? So there's this whole thing, I think funded by the WEF, NGOs, using NGOs as a front, about rewilding. We want to, grow wild spaces and preserve nature. There was even a pro-nature demo a few weeks ago in London. I think all NGO, all part of the WEF agenda. Labour Party in Wales wanted to reduce Welsh farmland by 10%. What's that going to do to the food supply? The Tories have been bringing in more and more regulations under climate change to make it uneconomical for farmers to farm. The government is offering £100,000 to a farmer to retire. That's not fostering self-sufficiency. And then people who keep chickens at home, I think in October, if people, you know about that, right? You can end up 6 months in prison if you don't tell the government you got a chicken. Some guy's got online porn on their computer, does 90 days. And some guy who's got a chicken and didn't tell the government gets 6 months. But the Tory party had to deal with, yes, the Tory party.
I'm worried about the 90 days for porn because
I know they're both ridiculous
for a very long time. If that's the case,
I know. Kiddie porn. Sorry, 90 days of kiddie porn. Not none of that. Yeah. Kiddie porn. So the Tory government have had to deal with liberty-loving Tories, right-wing Tories, right? Labour doesn't have that. They're going to roll it out even further. They're going to go for net zero even faster. And that's going to deny us food self-sufficiency and deny us energy self-sufficiency. They're going to tax the hydrocarbon companies to further net zero. That's going to cut investment and impoverish British people and make them colder. So that's what they're going to be doing right now. That and CBDCs, which they're going to carry on bringing in. Tony Blair, who has escaped prison.
CBDCs are coming, Mitch.
He's coming, digital IDs, right, for dealing with illegal immigration because
how is that going to deal with illegal immigration? How? Can you explain how a digital ID is going to solve?
I'm walking down the street. How do they know I'm not an illegal? Let me show my ID so I don't get arrested and deported. How do we know you're not an illegal from Georgia? Show us your ID. It's all a lie.
Papers, please.
Gordon, it's a lie. That's what they're doing. Like climate change isn't really about the climate because they're bombing people, right? It's not about taking care of people. So it's all a lie. It's a pretense. And in the background, they're rolling out the Great Reset agenda, digital IDs, biometric digital IDs, and then a CBDC, and then you're surveilled. You can't eat steak because it's too much carbon dioxide you've consumed. Too much cow farts went into that steak. You can't. They've said they're going to roll out their low traffic networks, 15-minute cities, even faster because of the climate crisis. That's a bigger threat. Without the freedom of movement, how on earth are people going to organize?
Well, I'm just, I've just had a little bit of a thought. I don't know whether any of them have had this thought come across their minds. I think maybe not. But I've just got a little bit of a question. How is a country with just 60 million people, 65 million people in it, how is that going to affect how is them not eating as much steak or killing all the cows or whatever? How is that going to have an effect on a planet with nearly 8 billion people?
But it's all a lie. It's all a lie.
Bullshit,
it's
right?
absolute bullshit. And you're now a climate denier like me, it seems.
I'm not a climate denier. I think there's climate change. I'm on the fence whether there's man-made.
It ain't carbon dioxide. I was joking with you, right? But you're an anti-vaxxer too now, like me.
I am, yeah. I took the vaccine. I had two, and I was very ill after the second one as well. And given my time again,
no way. But it's the same people, the same agencies that poisoned millions of people. I saw something the other day in British statistics. Children that have been vaccinated are dying at something like 4,000% more than children that haven't had their COVID injections. 4,000% more, right? Now, if the mainstream media really cared, that would be all over the place, all over the news. If the government really cared, that would be all over the news. They don't care. And anybody who speaks up against them, like Corbyn, who's for liberty, like Farage, who's for liberty, Farage is awake to CBDCs, the danger of CBDCs. He's awake to the danger of digital IDs. Galloway is awake to them now. He wasn't before. Galloway and Farage have both had the injections. They were both in favor of lockdowns. They've woken up. Starmer has appointed Patrick Vallance, who was the chief medical scientist during lockdown, made him a lord. He's now the minister for science. This guy wanted to lock everybody down and give everybody the injections, the kind of policy that Mengele would have been proud of. So I would, just like in the Iraq War, I bet you were on that big demo.
I wasn't there.
The Iraq War.
I wasn't on the big demo, no. I was totally asleep back then.
Okay, fine. But had you known, right? I was on that big demo. I was on that big demo marching next to Muslims, pacifists, Quakers, socialists, and the BNP, because the BNP opposed the Iraq War. We need to unite, because what they want to do is to have us fight each other and bicker with each other. What we actually need to do is to unite, because they keep bringing all these divisions in, divide us along gender, pro-sexualization of children, anti-sexualization of children, pro-trans, anti-trans, pro-immigration, anti-immigration, pro-this, pro-that, pro-climate change. They want to divide us. We have to unite for a united front, because right now the biggest threat, CBDCs, eating bugs.
So you just want the money system to carry on the way it is then?
No, I don't want the money system to carry on the way that it is.
So if we don't have CBDCs, what's the other option then?
Sound money. And Farage understands sound money.
So what do you mean by sound money?
So I don't mean fiat currency, because you and I had this conversation before. What fiat currency robs labor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sound money is something that can't be printed away, counterfeited. Bitcoin, gold, silver.
So some sort of digital currency then?
Yeah.
Could be a digital currency.
Yeah, but a decentralized,
but
a decentralized one that can't be controlled. And we are moving that way.
We've got one, haven't we?
Bitcoin, Monero, Pirate Chain, got quite a few.
Yeah. It's like I just feel as if we're the answer, Rich. I feel as if, like you say, uniting across class lines. I totally agree with it, right?
Class lines, race lines, gender lines, we all have to unite, and they're going to keep picking us apart. The British imperialists are masters at divide and rule.
Yeah. Which is why I'm very wary when people like Nigel Farage use immigrants as a divisory tactic on the electorate to rile up racists to get votes. Okay. I'm very, very aware that he does that, and it's racist.
Have you listened to his long-form interviews? Have you listened to his long-form interviews? Not the ones on TV.
There's no doubt he's a good speaker, and there's no doubt he avoids people if they were to. Nobody's ever hit him with this question either. That's the point. Nobody, no media outlet is going to hit him with this question because they're all bought and paid for. They don't want.
But they'll set him up. They'll set him up, like with that actor. Channel 4 paid this actor. Channel 4 paid this actor, right, to through a medium company or whatever, right, to frame Reform as racist. If Reform was really, really racist, they wouldn't need to do that. Now, Channel 4 and the mainstream media, they're calling Corbyn an anti-Semite, and you and I, they're lying. But somehow they're telling the truth about Farage when Farage is going against what they stand for.
I mean, don't get me wrong, Rich. I've got nothing against the guy personally. I really haven't. I've seen him on many things, Farage, and he's really quite a likable chap. He really is.
Galloway in the house.
I'm not saying he's racist. I'm not saying he's racist. What I'm saying is the tactic of using immigrants, illegal immigrants who are coming in, let's face it, in minuscule amounts compared to Turkey, who have got 4 million of them, right? And are messing about in the Middle East, using a minuscule amount of that as a way to rile up the electorate, to rile up emotions, is racist. I'm not saying he is.
Three questions for you. Since Tony Blair relaxed, I've seen the figures. I can't remember them, right? Tony Blair made it easier for people to come in, right? by how many millions has the population increased by? Have the resources in the economy grown by the same number?
Yeah, that was freedom of movement caused a lot of that.
Yeah, then also, how do you deal with this genuine, authentic concern that non-racist working class people have? And how do you do it sensitively?
Well, my
Tony Blair
brother
wasn't in favor of open borders either.
Yeah, open borders are a really bad idea.
Yeah.
Whenever you've had mass migration anywhere in history, there's been gigantic problems.
Yep.
You look at Gaza right now. That was mass migration of the Jews into a land that didn't belong to them, and 700,000 Palestinians, out of their homes, kicked out of their land in what's known as the Nakba. And that's what the root cause of what's, they all want to say that it started on October the 7th. No, it started because we put white people in that land and said, that's yours now.
A colonial outpost. It was a colonial outpost for the British Empire.
Yeah, and there was a suggestion that it was actually that Israel was going to be in Africa. They were going to get more land with more resources and what have you, but they chose Israel just simply because of the geolocation of it.
Yeah, they destroyed
in the Middle East.
The West destroyed the Ottoman Empire, so they brought up. I mean, Britain does this. Britain is masterful at this, splitting India up into India, West Pakistan, East Pakistan, and then Ireland. Like the Irish people, Protestants and Catholics can't live together. No, we're going to keep this little bit in order to keep stirring the shit between you, so you never unite. Right? They're masters at that. And then we're going to split the Ottoman Empire, so it's not a threat to European hegemony, and we're going to plant this group of people in Palestine, and they're going to act as a colonial outpost for us. 1917 Balfour Declaration, as you well know, right?
Yeah.
They're masters at this, and my assertion is they're just playing the same game now.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Yeah, it does. It's really worrying times. I totally agree with you on it. I guess I'm just trying to look at solutions, and I'm trying to point out when somebody makes a big deal out of something for their own political gain rather than an actual solution. The actual solution to stopping these boats coming in is to put the Royal Navy on our shores. You wouldn't get any boats coming in then. They wouldn't be able to sell. The gangs wouldn't be able to make money because there's battleships in there. We're not going to get past them. So that solves it. But people like Nigel Farage would be against that because that would mean that you're leaving Israel open to the Yemenis.
That I don't know. I don't know what his solution would be, right? But what I have heard is the people coming over on the boats are being escorted by the French Navy halfway across. Then being escorted.
The French don't want them.
Yeah, that's right. Them being escorted by the Royal Navy or the Coast Guard or whatever, right? And then those life rafts, they go back.
Yes. Yeah.
To bring some more in, right? So there's probably some negotiation going on between the governments because in the background, you've got Britain rolling out the same WF policies as France, the same WF policies as the rest of Europe. You just have to look at lockdown and the vaccine mandates. They're all doing the same thing, a little bit of variation in Sweden. They're all developing CBDCs and arguing for digital IDs. And they're all saying, well, we have to have net zero because of cow farts. And they're all saying we need to go to war with Russia because Russia's got resources. Russia's got a fat load of resources, right? And Russia.
It's always about resources.
It's always about Russia, like Iran, has never been subjugated by the Europeans. So then the solution. But by the way, they are going to fail, Gordon. They are going to fail. I promise you. You've been
saying this all along. You've been saying this all along.
It's going to take time. It is going to take time. There was something. Actually, I can't find it. I'm not going to go to it. Right. The solution to when people want to divide us, when the enemy want to divide us, is stand for unity. Gandhi, when the British were out to divide, like in Calcutta, the riots between the Hindus and the Muslims, he stood for unity. Okay, you're a Hindu, you eat beef. I'm a Muslim, you don't eat beef, you worship cows. I eat that which you worship because I'm a Muslim. Well, right now we're going to unite because we got a common enemy, the British, who are out to kill us by the millions. Now, the WEF are out to depopulate. If they were really, really serious, if they really, really cared, they wouldn't keep rolling out the injections. A few people died, they would stop it. No, they carried rolling out the injections. They banned, my GP told me she can't prescribe ivermectin, even though it's completely safe and effective. That's
It's won
insane.
it's won a Nobel Prize in medicine.
Yeah, yeah.
I heard the other day it's the second most successful drug after penicillin.
Oh, it's fabulous, absolutely fabulous. By the way, I've got a friend who has some. And anyway, but you couldn't get it from the UK. Had to get it from India. So if they really, really cared, they'd make it available. And if you think about genocidal maniacs like Pol Pot, like Stalin, they kill people. They killed millions and millions of people within their geographic area that they controlled. In a globalized world, the WEF control much larger area. So they're playing the same game over a larger scale.
Well, they don't need us to run the machines anymore, do they? Because it's all automatic.
No, but and it's an info war, like Alex Jones says. It's through our mind that we get so scared that oh my god, I'm so scared that I can't go and see my grandmother. I'll have this injection that's never worked with animal testing that has no long-term data. I'll do as the government says. I'm so scared. So it's all about fear. Now you need to be scared about climate. You need to be scared about the climate. Was it something today? I don't know which paper it was, the Daily Express or something. We just had the hottest June ever, apparently. Really?
We had like 2 days of sun.
Was it yesterday where I'm in the southern England, right? It was like 15 degrees and raining. I'm saying to my wife, this is October weather. What on earth is it doing in July? Right? But they keep pushing the brainwashing, the programming, right? Be afraid, be afraid, be afraid climate. The whole climate change agenda was created from the Club of Rome in order to justify global control. That's what you do in a globalized world, right? And then in a globalized world, you can move people from one area to another in order to create conflict in that other area. Ireland doesn't have a history of imperialism. It doesn't have that same, I suppose, arrogant, superior, imperialistic streak that the British elites do, the British ruling class do. Irish, just lovely. They suffered for 800 years, right, under the yoke of the English. The English tried out famines on them first, exporting potatoes to feed the British here, to feed the English here, while they're starving in Ireland.
Well, the reason Ireland have got this problem is because they're still in the EU, right?
That's right. That's right. And then their MPs have just signed up to the EU Migration Pact. But Irish people don't want that. So then how do local people deal with such an issue where, in Pakistan, I wouldn't want a situation in Pakistan where 1/3 of 19 to 39-year-olds are recent arrivals from China or Europe or Africa or South America. Different culture, different language, no work. It isn't like they're coming in for work.
Are you worried that they're going to come through to the UK from Ireland then? Because obviously we haven't got this problem because the open borders are obviously the undocumented immigration we've got, but it's not nowhere near the numbers that you're talking about in Ireland.
Yeah, no, my concern is that that Keir Starmer is going to align with the EU without necessarily joining the European Union. They're going to do the same stuff as the European Union and sign up to the EU Migration Pact. Yvette Cooper's Border Security Command is actually going to be a conduit for more immigration, just like the Rwanda plan was a complete red herring. It was bullshit. It was never going to fly. They were probably using it to siphon off billions of pounds into their mates' pockets, right? That's not how you stop immigration.
They built a load of accommodation in Rwanda to house these immigrants, and Rwanda sold it. Did you hear about that?
Yeah,
there was a load of stuff that they rebuilt to house these these immigrants that we sent to Rwanda, and we haven't sent a single one yet, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, they built this housing, and Rwanda sold it and kept the money.
Yeah, well, the houses were probably built by some Tory mates. Some connection to the Tory party or BlackRock or Vanguard or State Street, right? Canada, I don't know how accurate this is. Trudeau's talking about nationalizing the hotels. I don't know if it will go through. Why? In order to house more migrants.
Yeah.
That's going to destroy tourism. It's going to destroy local industry. It moves power upwards and all these things. The open borders, even legal migration, when the economy isn't growing, justifies greater centralized power.
Yeah, we'll see what Starmer does. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to get us back in the EU.
Well, I don't know if all the European unions will align, and then there's probably some great big fat fee that Britain will have to pay. Meanwhile, what Britain's been doing under the Tories has been selling. I need to get this correct. Has been selling U.S. treasuries in order to depress U.S. interest rates and make the euro look stronger and make German bonds look better.
Everybody's been selling US Treasury there.
Yeah, in order to depress US interest rates. But Britain doesn't need to do that. Britain, I mean, if make me.
Wait. I thought the sell-off of US.
Oh no, it's been buying US Treasuries in order to lower its interest rates. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
You know, bonds. I get all mixed up about bonds and everything. Right, they're a bit confusing. So they've been buying US Treasuries in order to lower US interest rates, in order to make Germany and the European
Union. The EU have been buying US Treasuries.
Yeah.
You know, if the EU was around 100 odd years ago, they'd be buying a ticket for the Titanic after it had hit the iceberg. You know,
that's the whole thing about the EU.
Why are you're buying US Treasuries while the rest of the world is selling them off at a record rate because of the de-dollarization?
But you know why the European Union and the UK is doing it? The European Union is leeching Britain's wealth. You make me Prime Minister, do you know what I'll do? I'll reopen the coal mines, I'll reopen the gas fields and the oil fields, we'll dig oil out of the ground, we'll use that money to make this nation rich, the way that Qatar did. Bring back manufacturing. There is no country that doesn't have its own energy source that's well off. Because Qatar, they dig money out of the ground.
Yeah, people in Qatar get a dividend at the end. Every single person gets a dividend from the oil that they dig out the ground. And
yeah, what these WEF bastards are going to do with their net zero is they're going to kill us off. Cold kills more people than the heat does.
So they're going to bring in this carbon credits nonsense.
So they're going to try to. It will fail.
Qatar, you mentioned Qatar. They've just bought the equivalent of the United Kingdom in rainforests in Africa,
right?
To offset the carbon credit thing that's coming in. So Qatar obviously did the writing on the wall.
When asked about, well, you fly about all these, he's got all these private jets and stuff. It's okay, I buy carbon offsets. Fuck off, Bill Gates. That's what the rich can do. But the poor, they're not going to be able to do that. And they're going to impoverish the middle class. The Tory party did nothing to support small businesses. And that is a traditional Tory policy. They've made things harder for small businesses. They did nothing to attack inflation. They've been printing money like crazy. So you're inflating the money supply. So you need more pounds to chase the same amount of goods as before. And they've been taxing us. That's not Tory. Starmer is going to do much, much worse.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind that you're right there, Rich.
So then, listen, I don't care. I will stand shoulder to shoulder with Galloway and with Farage, because then there's three of us opposed to
on that situation, on that one thing, sure.
Right. But the immigration issue is part of their whole Great Reset. Just like the trans agenda, just like sexualizing children, because it has us fighting each other. We're disoriented and we can't put a united front forward.
Yeah, well, let's hope it fails, mate.
It will fail. It's going to take a few years, Gordon.
Right. It's going
to take a few years. Here's what I think is going to happen. Just like people woke up to the injections eventually, right? More and more people woke up and they said, okay, we're not going to bring in mandates because there's too much resistance. And then people woke up to lockdowns and masks. They're not going to try that again. I think more and more people are waking up to the lie of the climate change agenda. And as Starmer rolled, people voted Labour, those that did, I think, in this naive belief that somehow Labour is going to be better than the Tories. And they're going to discover that it's not.
Well, they didn't, though, did they? Less people voted Labour than did it.
But those that did, I've got metrocentric Labour voting friends in London, right? That still voted. This is what I couldn't get right. I've got a couple of friends. They're so opposed to what's going on in Gaza, right? The genocide in Gaza. They're so opposed to that. They still voted Labour. What the hell? What the hell? You got Workers' Party candidates in your constituency. Vote for them.
I'm so opposed to what Hitler's doing. Oh, there's a swastika. Let me put my X next to that.
Right, but why these people voted Labour is because Starmer's going to rescue the NHS. No, he's not. Starmer's going to push forward net zero because the climate's going to die otherwise. He is going to do that. He's going to rewild the countryside. Hello, where's the food going to come from?
What he's going to do with the NHS is exactly what Tony Blair did with PFIs.
Yeah.
Private financial initiatives. Basically, PFI. We're in Blackburn. I talked with Dr. Bob Gill. I covered that. And we went out and I picked his brains over dinner. And what he's going to do, and they've said this openly, is they're going to do private financial initiatives, which is essentially what that is what Tony Blair did was take the most profitable parts of the NHS and sold them off piece by piece and gave the contracts to private finance, and then basically sold the land that you aren't under. He did it with the fire service as well. Tony Blair did. I remember there was one place, it was up north somewhere, gigantic fire station that was going to be built. It was built. There's no fire there. There's no firemen there at all. It's just land that's sitting there. And it's costing the British taxpayer like millions every single year. And we don't own the land anymore. Yeah. So it's sort of like a
foundation hospitals. It's just a gift to BlackRock.
I urge anybody who is interested in this and interested in the way the Tories and Labour have gutted the NHS. Go and watch my talk with Dr. Bob Gill on Rumble, on my Rumble channel. There was a great lady there, a great NHS campaigner called Mary Whitby as well. And some of the things that Dr. Bob and Mary told us were, it'll curl your toes, because if we had a functioning media in this country, they would be on this like white on rice, but they're not. And that means that they're complicit in it too. And I mean, if you're still watching the BBC or any mainstream news, I don't know what to tell you other than, do you like being lied to and gaslit? Do you enjoy it? Because that's what they're doing to you. You can't trust them on anything. Look at the blackout on the Workers' Party. Look at that blackout. The Workers' Party got more votes than Plaid Cymru, and you never heard of them. Plaid Cymru were on the bloody debate stage.
Yeah.
You know,
Plaid Cymru just in Wales, which has a population of just over 1 million. Workers' Party is national throughout the UK. And they have an MP in Galloway who's this fabulous orator, well-established politician.
Total media blackout on it. Total media blackout. Absolutely. And you can see why, if you go and watch George Galloway's interview with Piers Morgan, you can see why. Yep. Because he destroyed Piers Morgan like I've never seen Piers Morgan been destroyed before.
Yep, I did watch that. It was good. Gordon, one big loss of this election, Galloway and Farage in the House of Commons together.
It would have been great. And Craig as well.
Entertaining.
Right, and Craig and Jodie McIntyre from Yardley and some of the others. And I mean, they're saying there's 5 pro-Gaza MPs. Well, I happen to know one of these pro-Gaza MPs is in Blackburn, and he's going to be no great shakes whatsoever. He's not going to be rattling any cages. This guy is basically, you might as well stick a red tie on him. He's backed by the same people, and he's a careerist, and he's very ambitious. So I hear.
Well, to Galloway's and Farage's credit, they're not career politicians. They've come up from the street. I mean, I don't mean like poverty, but they had to campaign. They had to pass beyond mainstream media. They weren't blow-ins like a local MP here and like Starmer's blow-ins all over the UK and Blair's blow-ins. One of the red flags, which you probably have, well, you'll agree with me on this, BlackRock endorsed Labour, which just supports your whole thing about the PFIs. So people still believe. This is the other thing that I think is going on, right? There's ideas that I've developed as political ideas and philosophies that I developed from when I was in my 20s and 30s and the anti-apartheid movement and all that sort of stuff, right? I need to update those ideas to the situation now. Let me give you an analogy. My children didn't have any vaccines when they were little, none. My parents were homeopaths. My kids aren't having vaccines. None, right? There are other people who gave their kids, the measles and mumps and rubella or the regular vaccines, right? Along comes this mRNA injection. Different circumstance. They didn't upgrade. They didn't update their thinking about vaccines. So in terms of, I don't think of left and right anymore. Well, not so much. I think more about authoritarianism and liberty. Centralization versus decentralization. So in terms of our traditional ideas about culture and immigration and sex equality, all of that stuff, I think we need to upgrade it, update it to the game that they're playing now. You and I have no issue with regards to gay and lesbian people. People want to do whatever they want, fine, right? Go knock yourselves out, have a great time.
Consenting adults?
Sorry?
Consenting adults, that's all I need to...
No problem, right? You and I do have an issue with pedophiles being called minor attracted persons. You and I do have an issue with men dressing up as women going into women's toilets. But no, but we'll get painted as transphobic. And one of the things that I think is going on is this assault on white traditional European culture. Now, I love all people. I'm anti-racist. I don't think it's correct to assault any person's culture and tradition. And if I think white people are getting a raw deal, they're under assault by elitists, by the ruling class who don't care about us. We're just useless eaters. Well, I'll stand with them. Over to you.
I agree totally. I've got nothing really to add on this. I wish I knew the solution, which I really do. But I do think that we need to stop looking outwardly for people to solve our problems and start actually thinking, you know what, maybe I should set up a garden in my, and grow my own tomatoes or grow my own veg or grow my own whatever, because that's, I think, the solution, to be able to take it out of, to take the power out of their hands and bring it back into our own communities.
Those movements are growing. They are growing, except
I can see it.
It doesn't work for the urban poor. It doesn't work for people in tower blocks. It's not so easy, right? And then also, they're attacking the seeds.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen this too, but that's not going to work.
It's not going to work. The bastards are just going to do a whole heap of damage and destroy what was of value.
That's not going to work. It's not going to work.
It's not going to work. We'll steal seeds, right? Do you know what happened in Nigeria with CBDCs?
Yeah, they made them. They put a 100% tax on it, didn't they? And they still bought it.
No, with CBDCs.
Oh, I thought you meant Bitcoin.
So no. Oh, with CBDCs, they rolled out CBDCs, right? First, what they did was they reduced the amount of cash that was available, right? Then they rolled out CBDCs. People rioted and protested. They used all sorts of other things to trade with, including bloody matchsticks.
I've said this all along to people who get set against CBDCs. I'm like, well, don't use them then. Yeah,
except what they're building. What they're building is this panopticon. The LTNs will. The whole idea, part of this.
That's a word. A what? A
panopticon. Do you not know what a panopticon is?
Well, pan means everything. Optic means so everything you're seeing, sort of like.
If you Google panopticon, it's a type of prison where you're watched all the time.
Well, we kind of hear.
Yeah, but they're going to make it even worse. So with the LTNs,
I don't know how they can make it worse. They can spy on you through your TV.
Yeah, here's how they're going to make it worse, right? This is the future that they have planned for us. That will fail, right? So we're all going to be, the whole country will be broken up into 15-minute zones, like 15-minute walking zones, right? They will be spy cameras like the London ULEZ or the Birmingham ULEZ, all over the place, tracking movements. We'll have a digital ID with a biometric wallet, which will be connected. So even if we walk or cycle, they'll be able to track our movements.
So China.
Much, much worse, because China isn't broken up into 15-minute zones, right? That's the game. They want to put in these 15-minute zones, and they need to do it. The pretense is it's in order to prevent climate change, but it's actually to keep us in these 15-minute ghettos, because then we can't mobilize and mix. They're going to introduce pay per mile.
So I keep thinking about George Carlin, about like his take on climate change. I just keep thinking about that segment that he did on climate change. Save the bees, save the whales, save those snails. It's like, it's so human to think that we can change this. It's so human to think that we can change the weather by eating bugs instead of meat.
And pay more taxes.
And pay more for the privilege of doing it.
Yeah.
It's like, if you really cared about climate change, you wouldn't be blowing the shit up. You wouldn't be blowing the shit out of Ukraine. You wouldn't be having all these wars that you have been having, one after the other. I heard Joe Biden the other day. They said, oh, well, you know, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. And he's like, well, I've been involved in a lot of wars. It's like, well, you know, at least you strung that sentence together and didn't poop yourself. I'll give you credit for those two things, I suppose. But that's not a good look. You know, you've been at war for 242 of your 232 of your 247-year history. You're a warlike.
Biden has voted for every.
Blowing it up. You are. Your military is the number one polluter of this planet, and it's not even close as to number two. It's not even in the same ballpark. So if you really cared about climate change, you would take your 1,000 military bases and you would fuck off back to America where you belong. But you don't, do you? So don't try and tell me you care about the climate, your climate, when you literally are responsible for the largest act of climate terrorism with the blowing up of the Nord Stream pipelines that we have ever seen in our history. Go and stick your climate change agenda right up your arse and then fuck off on the horse you rode in on, because you are talking bollocks if you think that us eating bugs is going to change the weather.
And paying more tax. Don't forget paying more tax. That's the other thing, Gordon, that's going to happen, right? Labour are going to increase taxes.
People don't pay them. Don't pay your taxes. Just don't pay them.
That's the protest.
How to do it.
Protest is going to increase. More and more people aren't going to pay.
Well, I'm not. I've just had a bill, and I'm going to be writing my letter. And I'm going to be. You remember when the last time I came on, you showed me that letter of the gentleman who was writing backwards and forwards. I'm going to use that as a template.
That person. I got to tell you, that person got in touch with me. Right? They got a response. They got a response, right, from the HMRC. Right? So HMRC apologized for dealing with it as a complaint. They said, we don't do that anymore. It's just standard practice. Okay. They also said, look, as an individual, you can't really determine government policy. Then the other thing they said is that, you know, it's really up to the government about what international laws it abides by or not. And we'd be grateful if you paid the tax. That's what they said. No threat of escalation, but also they obfuscated. I'll see if I can get that letter. Perhaps you and I can do a separate conversation, right? They obfuscated the issue. The guy who's protesting what he or she wrote in that letter is domestic law. They ignored that bit. They just completely ignored that bit. And then they said about individual influencing policy. No, this is about domestic statutes.
Yeah. It's not about policy. It's about international and domestic law.
Here's something that I found out that this person may or may not do, right? But this is possible. So there's a presumption of innocence.
Yeah.
You're innocent until proven guilty, right? There's other presumptions. One of the other presumptions is the presumption of unrebutted affidavit. So an affidavit is a sworn statement of fact. So and it has to be, I don't know, witnessed by a solicitor or somebody who witnesses oaths or something, or a notary or whatever, right? So an affidavit would be something like, it's a statement of fact. So I swear, I so-and-so of such and such an address, swear that I had a conversation with Gordon on Monday, the 8th of July at 7:45, and he was vaping. And he was also wearing a black and yellowy green shirt. That's a statement of fact, right? It's also a statement of fact that he and I had a debate and we disagreed on certain issues and agreed on others. Statement of fact. Okay. So an affidavit is just a statement of fact. So what this person could do is write a statement of facts that they presented to HMRC, these arguments, International Criminal Court 2000, Terrorism Act 2001, accessories, aiders and abettors. At no point did HMRC respond with any reference to an exemption to those particular statutes.
Unrebutted.
Now, HMRC then have between 14 to 28 days, depending upon what the author of the affidavit says.
And if they don't
On
respond,
those points, and if they don't, the affidavit stands as fact and is summary judgment, which means they win the case.
I'm looking forward to doing that this week, mate. I'll probably be in touch. They've sent me a bill.
You will, have they?
They want some money out of me, and it's going to be fun.
Okay. Well, I know on the probity website, the deed of trust has become simpler.
Right. Okay.
Right.
I will check that out this week. I've got a lot of stuff that I need to do at home, but I'm gonna check that out this week. It's been a busy it's been a busy 7 weeks, I suppose, especially with Julian Assange going free as well. But my time in the next 6 months is all of a sudden opened up.
We are going to get busy. We are going to get busy fighting the WEF, Gordon, and spreading the word.
Oh, mate, can't I just have a rest for a bit?
No. We were wicked in our previous lives, so we have to fight for justice and equality now.
Oh, diddles.
Yes. Anything else, Gordon?
No, mate. No, I just wanted to talk to you about I knew you were going to talk about the climate, so I had something prepared on that. And yeah, I will just say to people that they're selling off your NHS. I know Rich is very worried about the WEF agenda and cryptocurrency. I would say that a clear and present danger is the selling off of the NHS.
Well, that's part of the depopulation agenda.
Yeah, it's been going on for years, and it's at the point now where they've defunded the NHS and wrapped it up in so much bureaucratic red tape and sold off all the profitable parts to private finance and kept the expensive surgeries that aren't profitable. The NHS still does them. It's only the profitable, simple surgeries, that have been offset to private financial institutions and Virgin and Richard Branson and whatever. It's only the profitable ones. So it's got to the stage now where the NHS really is about to collapse.
Well, they need the money. They need the money to find people, to spy on people who are keeping chickens. They need the money to kill people in Ukraine and Palestine and Yemen. They need the money to pay benefits for recent arrivals who don't have jobs, legal and illegal. They need the money to build the local traffic networks, all those spy cameras all over the place, all over England. And they need the money to develop CBDCs, Gordon. So, it's as far as they're concerned, it's an appropriate diversion of funds.
Well, they're gutting the NHS, and pretty soon people won't have one if it carries on.
Yeah.
My missus had a conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago. This person's got 2 small children. We haven't got kids. And she was telling them, the NHS is being sold off and it's terrible. And their response was, "That's a shame.
Yeah.
Got 2 kids. That's a shame."
Middle class? These friends are middle class?
Not middle class, no.
Wow.
Lower class, I would say, from council estate like me. If somebody with 2 kids can't get motivated over that statement, then we really are in a lot of shit.
There is I'm loath to mention the name, but I'll mention the name, right? So some people talk about sheep and sheeple, right? Tom Luongo talks about comfortable wolves. We are wolves that are comfortable. But then when we get uncomfortable, when the rubber hits the road, when it becomes painful, then people protest. When the taxes get too high, or Gerard Celente says, when you've got nothing to lose, people lose it.
Tell a Palestinian that and they'll agree with you.
Yeah, well, hopefully it won't get that bad here, right? But
you remember the when they closed the pits down, right?
Yes.
You know the one state institute that the one state service that they didn't argue about wages with. The doctors, obviously they won't pay them. Nurses won't pay them. They paid the police, gave them what they wanted.
Yeah. And
now they want to, hire a load more after getting rid of 8,000 of them. If you've had any interactions with a policeman over the last 5 years, you will know the standard of policing in this country. They're not the best and brightest. These are people that need lockers at work, otherwise they steal from each other.
Yeah.
And putting more of them on the streets is only going to, you can see which way it's going.
I've heard rumours in Ireland and in Britain, they may do this elsewhere. The male migrants, put them in the police force. Put them in the
Police force or military, and you're 2 years, you get your citizenship.
Give them sit. That's right.
This is the plot of Starship Troopers.
Okay. Well, Klaus Schwab must be a fan of Star Trek or Star Wars, right? But the other thing that Starmer's going to do is what Farage was saying. This is going to sign the UK up to the European Security Pact, which means that European police will be able to operate here and British police will be able to operate in the European Union. And then European police operating here will have no loyalty. And a quick mention about what's happening with France, right? I think France is... See, ultimately, it's going to fail. It's going to fail because it's unstable and
What's going to fail?
The Great Reset's going to fail, right? It's going to fail because it doesn't take care of people, and more and more people will get pissed off, and they'll have nothing to lose. They'll revolt. I wasn't going to have those injections in me. No way, no way, no way. No way, no way, no way. I would have done whatever it took to resist that. People will reach that point. More and more people will reach that point. It doesn't need everybody to reach that point. What is it, 3% to cause a revolution?
Yeah.
More people than that are awake. You just have to look at the numbers that voted for Reform and Workers' Party.
I think we need non-violent
peaceful
protest.
More and more people.
We're actually causing not just protests, not just getting out on the streets and protesting like we do for Palestine and what have you peacefully. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking a non-violent revolution where we refuse to pay tax.
We say no, we don't pay taxes. But also, you know about the Blade Runners in London?
So, yeah.
4,000 cameras, and what are the £100 angle grinder you can use again and again and again and again, right? It just gets too expensive to maintain that sort of centralized state that doesn't serve people. More and more people wake up. They roll out LTNs. I don't know how many millions of pounds of fines are unpaid in Birmingham and in London. And then they just chase it. It costs more and more and more and more, right? So yes, those kinds of protests. But also they are incompetent. Obama is incompetent. A corrupt money system.
Have you seen the state of our new Chancellor of the Exchequer?
Yes. Look, Galloway and Farage they're skilled, they're competent, they're politicians. Craig Murray, because they've not had everything handed on to them. But the problem with Galloway and Corbyn, and I would say Farage and Craig Murray, is they can't be bought. They've got integrity. Somebody who's got no integrity, who's got no skills, no competency, like possibly the guy you talked about in Blackburn, Adnan Hussein, they can be bought. So then you have midwits running things, and midwits are really shit at running things. They make loads of mistakes. Starmer can't speak from the heart. He has to look at his every 2 seconds because he can't even bloody remember what it was or rehearse it or whatever, right? So things fall apart because they can't get going. Compared to, say, the job that, say, Putin is doing in Russia, whether or not you agree with him, right? He's done it. The Russian economy has done really, really well. The ruble hasn't suffered. Manufacturing is growing, right? Russia is well respected in the rest of the world, apart from the Western nations.
Which is 10% of the population.
Sorry?
10% of the global population, basically. That's all that doesn't agree with.
Yeah, well, the rest of the world, they all want to make nice with Russia. Putin's a skilled diplomat. He's a skilled politician. Lavrov is a skilled diplomat, whether or not you agree with them or not, right? Meanwhile, idiots like Macron and Trudeau. I mean, Macron, come on, he can't hold anything together. Nobody loves him. Nobody cares for him, right?
I think his wife's a bloke as well, you know.
Yes, I do know.
And possibly a pedophile bloke as well, because he was like 15
because Macron was 15.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
that's something for the conspiracy theorists out there to chew on.
I loved it when Galloway was talking about Big Mike.
Big Mike, don't get me started. Let me tell you about Big Mike.
And also, he talked about Hunter Biden's underage sex activity, right? I said, go Galloway, you've caught up, mate, you've caught up. But Galloway and Farage, they have skills, they are competent, they can't be bribed. Well, maybe not so easily, they can't be bought, right? Now, in France, you've had this rigging going on with the left and the centre right making deals to not run against each other, and this massive campaign creating Marine Le Pen as a far right, when actually most of these far right parties are just traditional conservative parties.
I'm fed up of them calling people far right and far left. I mean,
that's just because you're far right.
They're calling the Democratic Party and the Labour Party in this country the left. It's like all the policies that you've just outlined there, Rich, that Labour stands for, and then you look at the support of Israel, the support of the Ukraine war, the support of NATO. This is authoritarian right-wing Thatcherism.
Well,
it's not left at all. There is no. If you want somebody on the left,
Thatcher was a sovereigntist. I think we need to update. It's authoritarian, establishment, liberty, anti-authoritarian, sovereigntist. Right? That's the update that's required, I think. So, anyway, in France, the sentiment against Macron in favor of Marine Le Pen's sovereigntist policies isn't going to go away. And without a democratic outlet, people will find another expression. Same thing in the UK. The sentiment for sovereignty, for tradition, for culture, for people, for a government that takes care of its people, that sentiment's not going to go away. It's going to ferment. In France, you've got a very unstable coalition. It's not going to last long, right? But I think the whole thing, I can see how the whole thing was possibly a setup. Macron calling elections, Sunak calling elections at the same time. It was a surprise. But they're both puppets, and above them there's the WEF and whoever's pulling the strings of the WEF, right? We'll do this together. That will bring Britain in. You've now got a conduit for open borders between France and Britain, even more. You've now got a conduit for even more weaponry and arms, both from Britain into Ukraine. Sorry?
I can't see them as placid as people are and as pliant as they are, especially, as we saw during COVID. I can't imagine him basically bypassing Brexit to do some other sort of free movement deal. He's going to sit well with people in this country.
You can just align with it. You can say, this is what we're going to do. He's got a massive majority. And that's what I'm saying. That sentiment is not going to go away, and it won't have doesn't have a parliamentary outlet.
If he's going to do this, and Rich, I believe he's going to. I'm not arguing that he's not going to at all. But if he's going to do this, then he's going to have a really rocky 5 years. And also, I'll end on this, mate, because we said we were going to wrap up 15 minutes ago. Craig Murray, in one of his speeches that I covered up in Blackburn, there was a Q&A session, and people were asking about the ICJ and case against Israel. And Craig is a very intelligent man. Yes. He's got legal background as well as diplomatic background. He knows, he was the architect of the ICJ case. He said this: if the ICJ finds Israel guilty of a genocide, which they will, it will take a couple of years, maybe 3 years, but they will find Israel guilty of a genocide. It will be impossible for Rishi Sunak and the hangers-on in this country that facilitated it to not be facing charges, just the same as Netanyahu and the other geezer.
Wow.
His words were, it would be impossible. I'm just going to plug you in over here because I'm losing battery. But
let's hope so. Meantime, we can take action quicker. probitycode.com or bit.ly/makewarhistory.
Absolutely, mate. And I'll be doing that. I'll be on your case this week about that, if I get round to it.
It's no worries, absolutely. Well, I'll share with you what I've learned and what I'm learning from Chris and others. Right, Gordon, absolute delight. And don't lose heart, comrade. Don't lose heart.
I'm not, mate. I'm not. I'm well rested now, and I've got a lot of free time on my hands coming up. So it's like, right, okay, what do I get my teeth into next? Obviously, there's Palestine, but Julian Assange going through has left a big gap in my diary. So
great work.
I'll get involved in it, mate.
Yeah, all right. Thank you so much. This is going to go out. Well, I'm going to send you the file and you can post it.
Yeah, I'll put it out on my Rumble too.
Yeah. All the best. Bye-bye.